What's going on, everybody? My name is Tenebrous Infinite, and today I'm bringing you guys tips and tricks to take down the new Apocalypse variants of each of the new machines. We're going to talk about how to deal with the new runners, the new ticks, the new tanks, and the new hunters. I've got some very excellent tips and strategies for you dudes to use. So let's just jump right into things here and start off with the smallest of the creatures, the ticks. So for the first enemies that we're going to focus on today, the ticks, always prioritize these guys over any other enemy and always aim to take off the tick pods of the enemies that have them. The tick's biochemical damage will really stack up over time, and if you ever need to heal it, just take a med kit. So now for the runners. These guys use the same biochemical weaponry that the ticks use, so if you ever get shot by an Apocalypse runner, always chew a medkit to stop that biochemical damage. One of the best ways to deal with these guys is letting them get in close and hip firing at them in order to target their weak points and avoid them doing that damage over time with their biochemical SMG. And as always, the Magnus is the best option for dealing with runners. When you're prioritizing who to shoot, always go for the runner in the back, because the runner in the back is more likely to try to shoot at you. And when you're dealing with Phoenix and also Apocalypse runners, always prioritize the Apocalypse runners. With the Magnus's auto-aim being toned down in the latest update, you'll want to really aim properly here. What I always do is I aim slightly to the right of the enemy, and then I aim down sights in order to get my lock onto the runner. And this is just proof that Generation Zero is a horror game. That runner just phased right through that wall to get at me. Now, onto hunters. When you've got an opportunity to, always use your 50 cal to take out one of the hunters when you've got the drop on them. They usually don't spawn in very large packs for the Apocalypse variant, so a lot of times it will be in your best interest to take down one of them before you start engaging the other one. You can take anywhere from 6 to 9 shots to take down an Apocalypse hunter. So I found that fighting these hunters at an extremely close distance is one of the best strategies you can use. You can utilize this to avoid the mortar attacks, and a lot of times avoid the flamethrower attack as well. Here you can see that it's much easier dodging the hunter melee attacks nowadays, so definitely do your best to avoid the melee attacks. And as long as you keep your spacing in this kind of sweet spot between where they can reach you with their melee attack, with the swiping kind of attack that they do, you'll be able to avoid almost all of the attacks that the hunters will try to utilize against you. The hunter counter still works like an absolute charm against these guys. So here I decided to show you guys how I approach closing my distance. What I do is I move at an extreme angle towards the enemy, moving towards them the entire time. And again, prioritizing those ticks in order to make sure that I'm not getting hit by the biochemical damage. And then you can see, now that I'm really close up to this guy, I'm able to peek out some of his weak points, being the kind of shoulder plates that he has, and also the gun that he has. With the flamethrower kind of detached, this enemy is basically a sit and duck, and he's going to try to make distance between you and him so that he can utilize his mortar attack. That just leaves him open to take you down very easily. Now next up, you should try to utilize everything in your environment to take on these enemies. It will conserve your ammo in the long run and really benefit fighting these enemies. Now here you can see again me just monitoring my spacing between this guy and then attacking all of the weak points I can and utilizing that hunter counter to take him down. Alright, so with the ticks, runners, and hunters out of the way, let's move on to the last enemy for today, the tanks. So again, just like with the hunters, if you can engage the tank at a distance, definitely do that. The tanks are absolutely deadly. So one of the best things about Alpine Unrest's map is the extreme verticality that you can get out of the mountains. Provides a whole bunch of excellent sniper locations and can keep you very, very safe from the explosive bombs that the tank will launch out and any sort of gunfire that it's going to try to shoot at you. Most of the time, at an extreme distance though, the tank will actually prioritize using its mortar. So another thing too is when you're engaging a tank at a distance is to just aim for the weak points that you know about and prioritize them, and you'll be able to take down the tank relatively easy within maybe 1 or 2 magazines. Now next up, again, kind of engaging these enemies at a closer distance is most of the time your best plan of attack. One of the things for tanks, in order to get them into this turning animation, is to get them to try to constantly do their melee attack, but turning fast enough so that way they'll have to reprioritize their lock-on on you. The melee attack from the tanks is incredibly deadly as it reaches much further than you can visually see. So you can see that I wound up getting lit on fire here even though I was way outside of the blast range. I'm not sure if that's ever going to get fixed or if that's by design, so just keep in mind when they're doing their melee attack, they're much more distance than what you can visually see. So it was at this point that I noticed that I didn't have any medkits left. So I went into a little bit of a panic mode and decided that guerrilla tactics would be the best approach to fighting this tank. Utilizing the kind of destroyed building to avoid most of his attacks. And again, just circling as quickly as I could in order to expose some weak points and do a little bit more chip damage from the burn over time effect from the AG4. Using these experimental weapons against the new Apocalypse enemies is highly advised because you definitely need the improved firepower to deal with them. Again, utilizing the minimal cover that I had from the building was the best option because all I had was 1 health left. So if you have a hard time dealing with these tanks, definitely utilize cover as much as you can. Now here is a much more successful approach to the tank. I had taken off the tick pod And I managed to catch this tank as he was wandering around, and I find that that's always one of the best situations you can get a tank into. Another thing too is, again, utilizing extremely close distance against these enemies. When you're using extremely close distance against the tanks, a lot of times it will try to do its stomping attack as opposed to its fire wave attack, and the stomp attack is much easier to avoid and manage than the actual fire attack itself. Utilizing materials that have a high stagger rate is incredibly effective for opening up weak points on these tanks, so you'll want to utilize things like grenades, tech pods, the RPG, or the experimental shotgun in order to kind of stagger the opponent out and expose the weak points that you're trying to hit. And then you'll also want to prioritize taking off the machine gun on these tanks, because the burn over time effect and the base damage that it does is incredibly dangerous. The other thing too is when the tank only has its mortar left, it's very easy to kind of deal with the explosives that it places around and focus on those while you're fighting the tank itself. The main thing these explosives do is they limit your mobility, so definitely dealing with them as quickly and efficiently as possible is always in your best interest when you're fighting one of these guys. There you guys go. Those are my tips and tricks for dealing with the new Apocalypse machines. Utilizing close quarters combat, spacing, and guerrilla tactics will help you in your fight against the deadliest machines to date in Generation Zero. So I'm gonna leave you off with this insane fight I had. Alpine Unrest has brought about some of the craziest battles in Generation Zero, and the devs have really smashed it out of the park with this DLC. If you haven't yet, you can purchase Alpine Unrest in your platform's store on Xbox, PC, and PS4. Thank you so much for watching.